Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the killing of Osama bin Laden and the future of Al-Qaeda. And of course we have with us to talk about the death of Osama bin Laden and where we go from here in terms of fighting terrorists. Dr. LMadu. And of course, Dr. Madu, let me welcome you to the show this morning again and to explain to our audience that not only are you our African continent expert, but you're also the Middle East expert in reference to some of these issues that we deal with. And I think that you've got a real intriguing topic here this morning dealing with Osama bin Laden and the future of Al-Qaeda. And I think I also might remind our audience, Dr. Madu, that you were here with us not long ago, and we talked about many activities dealing with the Middle East, but I doubt very seriously if either of us realized that we were that far from the end of Osama bin Laden. But while we are at his end, let's go back to his beginning. Who was this individual Osama bin Laden? A lot of things are coming out in terms of the press now in reference to him, but who was he?
Well, you know, Mr. bin Laden, you know, as most people, you know, is from Saudi Arabia. You know, he was born around 1957. In fact, his father owned the largest and the biggest construction company in Saudi Arabia. He was close to the king. You know, his father died in 1967 from an unexplained plane crash. And as is usual, you know, children inherit from their father. And he inherited millions of dollars, you know. Some said in the neighborhood of 80 million, some in the neighborhood of 60 million, something like that, you know, from his parents.
He was a wealthy man.
That's correct. He was very wealthy on his own, you know, from that inheritance. And after that, you know, he went to college in Jeddah, University of Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. Some, you know, said he graduated. Some said he didn't graduate. Nobody is sure of that. But one thing is certain, you know, he has skills in engineering, which was what he studied. Then after that, about 1980s, 70s, you know, late 79 to 80s, after the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, you know, the Americans, the Saudis, and the Pakistanis, you know, started urging those who believe in Islam, quote, you know, to rally to Afghanistan to fight the Soviet Union. Bin Laden answered this call, you know, and went to Afghanistan with some other Arab colleagues of him, you know, to fight, you know, against the Soviet Union. It was there in 1982 in Peshawar, you know, Pakistan, that he met a man called Dr. Abdullah Azam, who was his mentor, you know, insofar as Islamic theology is concerned. And then after that, you know, he, you know, stayed there for a while. And when the war ended in 1989, when the Soviet Union withdrew, he came back to Saudi Arabia and started creating some problems for the king. Because of the influence of Dr. Azam and the rest, you know, he started calling for change in the Saudi, you know, society against the Americans, you know, having anything to do with Saudi Arabia, and you know it, etc., etc. Then during the Gulf War, before the Gulf War and during the Gulf War, he got very upset that the United States had bases in Saudi Arabia, and he started, you know, abusing the king and the rest, calling them infidels, and, you know, for bringing in American troops in Saudi Arabia. So that upset the government of Saudi Arabia very much, and they say, well, you have to leave one way or the other. So they kicked him out. So he went to the Sudan, you know, to establish himself. So he was in the Sudan from 1991 to 1996, when under American pressure, you know, they told him to leave. So he left and then moved to Afghanistan in 1996, you know, where he was protected by the Taliban government of Mullah Omar. You know.
Okay, and so Dr. LMadu, let's stop for our first commercial break, but essentially I think that you're given some very, very revealing information in reference to who this individual was, and that the very fact that he was a man of quite a bit of influence in a real sense to begin with, but it was not the influence that the king wanted him to have. And of course we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.